Hello everyone, I'm Ramindu Deshapriya on behalf of the Sustainable Education Foundation, and today I'll be talking about Google Summer of Code and how it works and everything you need to do in order to be selected as a Google Summer of Code student. So basically, when we talk about Google Summer of Code, it's a program hosted by Google on behalf of open source organizations around the world, with the aim of getting university students to work on open source software, and with the aim of basically paying university students around the world to work on open source organizations and their various software applications. So let's talk about open source software. So open source software can be a lot of various things that we use in our day-to-day lives. So if you talk about popular open source software applications, one is Mozilla Firefox, the web browser. Another is VLC Media Player. I know a lot of people have used this. So basically, a lot of open source software is very popular and used by millions of people around the world. And through Google Summer of Code, Google is giving the opportunity for various people, for university students around the world, to work on this software and get their code or the applications that they help to develop used by millions of people around the world. The origin of Google Summer of Code came from, the founders of Google, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. So basically, Larry Page was playing around at the Google office, and one day he decided that you get a lot of university students who are doing computer science at the universities, playing around, during their summer holidays. They're working at fast food restaurants and stuff like that. Basically, what he said was flipping burgers. So the concept of Google Summer of Code is to flip bits and not burgers. So the idea behind that is that during your downtime at university, during your summer holidays, basically, to get university students to work on, basically computer science university students, to work on actually building software that is useful to people. So that is how Google Summer of Code came about, and we've had more than 10 years of Google Summer of Code happening. Actually, it's in the around the 16th or 17th year right now, and for most of those years, Sri Lanka has been one of the major contributors to this program. We've been in the top 10 countries with the most number of students every year. So that has been a really great thing in terms of the participation that we've had. Also, if you think in terms of universities, the University of Moratuwa has been one of the universities with the highest participation for the most number of years. Right now, the University of Moratuwa is not one of the universities with the highest participation. We are in the top 10, but we are not as high as we used to be. We are not number one, but still, Sri Lanka is one of the major contributing countries towards this program with the most number of students. So that has been a really great thing. Even in the 10th year of Google Summer of Code, the program organizers visited Sri Lanka, and we had a huge project in the country where we traveled around the country with the Google organizers to promote this program to various universities all over Sri Lanka. So some of the most frequent questions I get from people who are willing to participate in this program are, basically how do I find a mentoring organization. So to talk about mentoring organizations, we have to explain a bit more about the format of this program. So what happens here is Google selects a bunch of open source organizations that you and I know well, like the Apache Software Foundation, then VLC Media Player, Mozilla Firefox, WordPress, Joomla, all of these, and many more other, up to around 170 organizations each year. Google selects these open source organizations as mentoring organizations, and that mentoring organization list was announced today. So that list is available for anyone to go and access. So Google selects these mentoring organizations, and these mentoring organizations put out a list of ideas or project ideas for Google Summer of Code. So any potential student can actually go on the Google Summer of Code organization list, select a potential project, and then work on getting selected for that project, or work towards building the solution that is required for that project. So how do we go about doing this? Basically what you have to do is Google Summer of Code is targeted at getting more people involved in open source software development. So any mentoring organization will be more interested in getting more people engaged in developing software for their project. Because if you think about it, most of these open source organizations are based on volunteer contribution. So the people who work on developing software for these, so think about a couple of open source software projects that we know. Think about Mozilla Firefox or VLC Media Player or OpenOffice or even WordPress, Joomla, any of these software. The people who are involved in developing these software are mostly volunteers. So they have day jobs. They are not getting paid for working on this open source software in most cases. So one of the main aims of the Google Summer of Code program is to get people involved in these open source software projects. So any mentoring organization, any software developer for these open source organizations will be interested in hiring Google Summer of Code students that will be able to stay with that particular organization. So staying power is one of the main points that people consider when they're selecting Google Summer of Code students. So how do you define staying power? One is because all of these software are involved with very extensive communities from all around the world. It's very important to be engaged with these communities. So you have to work with these different communities, and basically what you would expect from a potential Summer of Code student is you help out other people. Basically, if you think about a software like think about something like OpenMRS, which is a medical record system. You have a very structured but complex installation system for this software. So someone comes and asks, how do I install this software? So a potential Summer of Code student might answer saying, how do I so if someone asks, how do I install this software, or I'm installing the software and I ran into this particular problem, a potential Summer of Code student might answer, you do these things, you have to install these dependencies, you have to have this environment in place. So you answer that person, and you are basically engaged with the community, and that's a very important thing when you consider engaging with an open source software project or a software or mentoring organization in the context of Google Summer of Code. So when a mentoring organization is selecting you or is considering you as a potential Google Summer of Code student, they will basically consider whether you have been engaged with the community. Also, another very important thing is, so today the Summer of Code mentoring organization list was released. So you have to select one of those organizations, one or more. So it's recommended to generally apply for only one organization, but of course you're free to apply from more than one organization. But if you focus for one organization, you have a better chance of being selected. That's the basic rule of how it works. So let's say you selected an organization. You have to engage with the community that is involved with that particular organization. You have to so they will have a bunch of different communication channels. One might be a mailing list. One might be a IRC, so Internet Relay Chat channel. Or a lot of organizations now have moved to modern chat mechanisms like Slack or Rocket Chat or even things like Telegram. So you have to be active in those communities. So today you select your mentoring organization, and from then onwards you must be involved within that community. So to be involved in that community, basically what you have to do is you have to basically get involved in their issue list, which might be hosted on different platforms. You get involved in the issue list, you fix some basic issues. So there is no, what I say is generally on these sessions is, there is no issue that is too easy for anyone, right? So any issue might be important for the software, for the particular open source software that is being developed. So the first issue that I fixed on open source software that I did Google Summer of Code for was to change the color on a web page, right? On a particular piece of text on a web page, I changed the color. That was the first issue that I fixed. So there is no issue that is too easy or too trivial for you to get into a particular community or get recognized in a particular community, right? So you have to be aware of that and cognizant of that, and the basic thing is to let the people who are running the Summer of Code program for a particular open source software to know that you are there, you are applying for a particular project, and that you are actually engaged with the community, and that you are willing to help grow this particular open source application. Okay, so we have a few people on the video. If there are any questions, you can add them as comments, and so we'll move forward. Okay, so if we were to outline a bunch of steps that people need to do in order to get selected as a Google Summer of Code student, the first thing is, of course, so today the Google Summer of Code mentoring organization list has been released. You have to go on the Google Summer of Code official site and select a mentoring organization based on your technology preference, right? There is a search filter on the site where you can search if you want to do a PHP project. You can search same PHP, and that will give you a list of mentoring organizations who use PHP in their particular open source applications. So let's say you selected one, right? When you select one, there will be a list of Google Summer of Code project ideas on their particular page. So you go to the ideas list, you look at the ideas, right? So potentially there could be a bunch of ideas that you don't understand at all, but that is not a point to worry about. You shouldn't worry about the fact that you don't understand what they're saying in this particular, the project idea topic might be very cryptic, but you should be able to go in and understand. So I know a lot of people who've done Google Summer Code projects very successfully, and at the first point of seeing the project idea topic, they had no idea what they had to do. So basically, go into all of these topics of the organization that you've selected, see what needs to be done, and then the first step is, so all of these open source organizations have some form of open source software application that they develop. So the first step is to download maybe a nightly build, maybe the latest development version of it, maybe even a production release of the software. You download it and you install it and you set up your development environment, right? So you set up your development environment, get it installed, get it running, up and running. And if you encounter any issues during this process, all you have to do is ask on the mailing list or on the particular chat channels that they have defined. So that's all you need to do. If you ask questions on these chat channels or whatever email list that they have, the basic rule is no question is a dumb question. There are no dumb questions, there are no stupid questions. So you can ask anything. You can ask the very basic question of how do I install this software. I've encountered this issue, I got this error when I'm installing the software. If you ask that, there will definitely be people who are willing to answer. So all you have to do is ask, and there will be any amount of people, any amount of contributors to that software who are willing to answer your question. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And so now you've installed the software, you have a very basic idea of the project that you're going to do. So what you need to do next is figure out who the mentor for that particular project idea is. So any open source organization who are mentoring for Google Summer of Code will mention the mentors that are involved in that particular project. So when you're accessing that project, you will see a list of mentors who are going to work with the students in that particular project. So what you need to do is reach out to those mentors, but not reach out in the form of, hi, I'm willing to work on this project, what do I need to do? Not in that format. So to be a successful Google Summer of Code student, what you need to do is, so you found out the mentor who is working on the project that you're willing to do for Google Summer of Code. So you need to get a basic idea of the project. You need to read the project idea, and let's say when you read a particular project idea, you have a bunch of questions that you need to ask. You have a bunch of clarifications that you need to get done. So in that context, it's okay to reach out to the mentor who is assigned to that project and ask, okay, so the first project I did was related to get text translations. So get text translations are, you have a basic function, you have a translated file. When you give the file, it gets replaced, right? The relevant language will get replaced based on the selected language. So the first question I asked my mentor was, so there are a bunch of get text libraries. The application I was working on was in PHP. There's a C-based get text library which can also be integrated to PHP through a extension library. Then there's a POPHP get text library which is somewhat slower than the C library, so on and so forth. So what I asked first was, which get text library do we work with? It was not, okay, I'm working on this get text project, how do I get started? It was not a question like that. It was a question relevant to the project, which makes it interesting for the particular mentor, right? So the mentor is also a busy person. He's a volunteer. He or she is a volunteer for that open source project. So they don't have a lot of time to answer very basic questions, right? So if you're reaching out to the mentor, you should ask something very specific to the project. How do I do this? What is the approach? Or this is my approach. Can you validate this? Is this correct? Something like that. You can ask basic questions from the community. Basically, how do I install this software? Or I got this error when I was installing the software. Those kind of questions you can ask from the community. But when you are asking from the mentor, you need to ask questions that are very specific to the particular project that you're working on. So that is the next step. So you reach out to your mentor, you build a connection with your mentor, you build a rapport with your mentor, and now your mentor is interested in what you're trying to do. Then you have to work, basically you have to set aside an amount of time every day during the application period. You have to set aside a certain amount of time to work on your project, right? To work on the basic aspects that are needed on your project. So the application period will consist of writing a proposal for Google Summer of Code, which will go through to your mentoring organization and will get evaluated by the various mentors and the organization administrators that are involved in that open source project. So during this process of writing the proposal, you have to be engaged with that open source community every day. So this might seem like a lot of work, but to be honest, I did this during my university third year exam period, right? During my university third year exams, while I was studying for the exams, I set aside an hour every day in the night to work on applying for so that was my first Google Summer of Code application. I worked on applying for that. So setting aside 1 hour means you're doing a lot of things. One thing is you can research ahead on your approach for the Google Summer of Code project. Another thing is you can ask questions from your mentor. Another thing is you can send an email to the mailing list saying, okay, this is the next steps. Okay, I've done this far in research for the Summer of Code project I'm doing. I'm doing these next steps as the next things I'm doing for this project. You can spend some time on whatever chat channel they are maintaining, helping out other people. These things go a long way towards getting yourself selected as a Google Summer of Code student. So you spend half an hour on the chat channel that they're using and help out a couple of people. People will notice you, and when the actual selection of students comes around for the organization, they will remember you. So the most important thing is getting remembered as a useful and a contributing member of this particular open source community. Okay, so now we talked about a couple of things, a couple of steps you need to take in order to apply for your Google Summer Code project. One is selecting the organization, next is talking to the mentor, third is second is getting the software that they're using installed, third is talking to the mentor, fourth is outlining your particular project plan for the project that you're working on. Then so finally you write your project proposal and you submit it to Google, right? You submit it to Google, but it will go to the particular mentoring organization and their mentors will look at it and evaluate it. Okay, so you've submitted your project proposal. Let's say you've submitted a great proposal, right? It doesn't end there. There is a month-long period where the mentors will deliberate and look at project proposals and select the best students for their Google Summer of Code program. So during this time, it's very important to stay engaged with the community. So I've been a Google Summer of Code mentor, and I've seen a lot of students, after they submit their proposal, they are nowhere to be seen. You can't find them anywhere. They are not engaged with the community. They are not taking out the daily bills. They're not asking questions. Nothing is happening. So in that case, that is a definite minus for that student. So the basic important thing is, after you submit your proposal, you get a month's time. Even if you do it once every couple of days, you must engage with the community. You must forward the goals of your project. Let's say you have some research to do. You do that research for the project, and then if you've done some work on the project during the proposal or the application selection period, then you have a great chance of actually getting selected. Okay, we have a question from the Sustainable Education Foundation itself. As a beginner, what are a few organizations you would suggest? Okay, so selecting organizations is very important. Let's say as a university student, you worked on a bunch of different technologies, right? Let's say for your second year project, you did a Java application or a PHP application. So those are the most common two development languages I've seen people do, PHP or Java. Of course, everyone knows JavaScript, right? So the most important thing is, when you're selecting an organization, select something that you're comfortable with in terms of technology. Because now, so the organizations have been announced, there's going to be a lot of competition. So the best thing is to select an organization that uses a technology you're comfortable with. Let's say you're a PHP buff. So when I first started Google Summer of Code, I had done a lot of PHP. I had worked on content management systems, various PHP frameworks. So I knew a lot of PHP. So I basically worked on a PHP based mentoring organization. So it's important to go with your strengths at this point. I know some people who have learned a programming language. So there was a senior of mine who worked on the Python software foundation. He developed Python. He didn't know Python when he applied for the project, right? But still, that is a very, it's a risky situation. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's always safe to go with a particular programming language that you're already familiar with. So I'd recommend that you select a programming language you're familiar with. There's a nice search function on the Google Summer of Code page. You search for the technology and then you select an organization that is working with that particular technology that you're familiar with. Okay, again we have a question from the Sustainable Education Foundation. What are the perks of doing Google Summer of Code? Okay, so there are a lot of perks. Basically, the first and foremost thing is you're a university student, right? And you're not earning any money. So as a university student, if you do a Google Summer of Code project, you get the opportunity to learn a whole lot of money, right? So when I was doing it, when I first did it, it was $5,000. Then it went up to $6,000. Right now they've normalized the fees a bit based on the general income of different countries. So now a Google Summer student applying from Sri Lanka gets up to around $2,500, $2,800. But still, that's a lot of money. You're working for 3 months and earning in excess of 400,000 rupees, right? So that's a lot of money. That's more than most of the professional engineers in the IT industry in Sri Lanka today earn at this point, right? So you're basically earning a lot of money. Then of course, another perk of doing Google Summer of Code is the experience. You will not get this kind of experience from anywhere else. Even from working in the IT industry for a few years, you will not get this type of experience. So when I entered the IT industry, because I did Google Summer of Code, I knew a lot of things. At that time, version control systems like Git were just coming out. But I already knew how Git worked. So those things were a huge perk for me when I was entering the industry. I knew a lot of things that other people didn't know. And I could enter the industry as a fully fledged professional who has worked with teams across the globe, international teams who are developing production grade software on a daily basis under standard software engineering processes. So that experience, you cannot amount to any amount of money that you get. This experience that you get is worth more than any of that. And then of course, if you think about the fact that you're developing open source software, there's a huge perk on that side. So Akshita, who is like the leader of the Sustainable Education Foundation, did a Google Summer Code project for Open MRS, Open Medical Record System, which is a free and open source medical management system which is used all around the world. So basically you develop a humanitarian open source software application like this, you are helping save people's lives. So I worked on the Sahana Software Foundation software applications, the Sahana Software Foundation being a disaster management system which is directly helping to save lives. So by working on a particular open source software, right, you are helping people to gain the advantage that everyone can gain through technology. So that is something that also cannot be measured in terms of money. So those are basically the perks I see. One is the amount of money you gain, the experience you gain in terms of the technology use and the software engineering processes you work in and the communities you get to work with, and then the fact that you're developing free and open source software for people to use around the world and potentially could help save lives, could help make lives of people easier. And even if you're developing something like VLC Media Player, millions of people around the world use it, and it helps entertain people or make people's lives better. Okay, so Jude Niroshan wanted to know, what if I apply for multiple organizations and love to work with both organizations? How do I choose one over the other? Okay, so this is an issue that we as mentoring organizations have on a very regular basis as well. We get brilliant students applying for 2 organizations and getting selected for both organizations. Right? So Jude, the problem is this decision, if you get selected for 2 organizations, the decision is not up to you. It's up to the mentoring organizations. So basically what happens is the mentoring organizations have a huge session over, a huge communication session over a call or something, where they discuss, okay, your organization has selected this student, our organization has also selected this student, and then they argue it out, saying, okay, we have only 3 students, we need this one, this is a critical project for our open source organization, so we need this person to work on this, and so on and so forth, and then they will decide on that. That's how it basically works. There will be a what we call it is a conflict resolution session, where all organizations including Google will be present, and people will argue out which organization needs which student. So basically you don't get a say in who to select. By applying to 2 organizations, you are acknowledging that you are willing to forfeit the capability of working for one of those organizations. You will only get to work for one of those organizations, which is chosen by a consensus between the different mentoring organizations who are mentoring for Google Summer of Code. Okay, I think that concludes everything I wanted to say. So a few ending notes that I want to put out to you guys. Okay, sorry, I got disconnected for a minute there. So a few ending notes. One is so choose your mentoring organization wisely based on the technology that you're strong in. Engage with your mentoring organization on a daily basis. Submit a strong proposal. While you're submitting that strong proposal, make it evident to the mentors and the people who are working on that open source organization, on that software, that you are capable of completing this Google Summer of Code project by doing things like engaging with the community, fixing bugs, contributing software to that particular application. And then once you've submitted the proposal, still engage with the community, stay with them, work hard on furthering the ideas that you brought up for the completion of that project, and finally you will get selected. And then once you get selected, work hard on your project, and then make everyone happy and complete your project successfully. And that is what makes a great Google Summer of Code project, which will be a great honor to you. It will look great on your CV, and then it will actually help further the goals of open source software and of delivering free and open source software for people around the world. So it's something great that you're working for here. It's not just that you're working for yourself to earn some money. You're doing something for the world. So keep that in mind, and do your best. And let's hope everyone who applies for Google Summer of Code from Sri Lanka this year gets selected, and Sri Lanka retains its place as one of the top 10 countries in the world with the number of students who get selected to do Google Summer of Code projects. Thank you very much. If you have any more questions, you can direct them to the Sustainable Education Foundation, and I will do my best to answer all those questions. Thank you and good night.